So I'm here to share with you the do's and the don'ts, how to run nonprofits, and to show you that you don't have to choose between working in community mental health and working in private practice only. Welcome to today's training. We are going to be talking about leading without burning out, and we're going to tackle the 4 biggest leadership struggles. I am your host, Dr. Lauren Lawson, and I am a nonprofit leadership coach. So, without further ado, let's dive into what we're going to be talking about today and we're going to dive into the most common leadership struggles that I hear from supervisors, directors, CEOs, executive leadership team, and that is on setting boundaries with supervisees or staff, delegating effectively, managing your own burnout as a leader, holding team members accountable, and key takeaways and next steps. And you might think, oh, I've done this before, I have this down, but please don't overlook this. I had a mentor once tell me that a fish rots from the head down, and I truly believe that that happens in nonprofit leadership, in for profit leadership, that if you are not leading in a way that is creating loyalty among your staff and them not feeling burned out and overwhelmed, and there's um, a lot of turnover, then you are the fish that is rotting from the head down. And we don't want that to happen in your nonprofit. So today we're going to talk about how to overcome that. So, a little bit about me. My name is Dr. Lauren Lawson. For those of you that are new in my group, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed in PA and California. I also have my PsyD in psychology, specifically in marriage and family therapy. And I started my own nonprofit 13 years ago in California while simultaneously working in community mental health, working my way up the chain into executive leadership. So, I've worked in multi-million-dollar nonprofits, and I've run my own nonprofit for the last 13 years. In 2019, I moved back to Pennsylvania and opened up a branch of my nonprofit in PA. So now we operate in Pennsylvania and California, and I have about 12 clinicians that work for me. And it's been amazing since I stepped out of leading in community mental health and really focused everything on my own nonprofit. So I'm here to share with you the do's and the don'ts, how to run nonprofits, and to show you that you don't have to choose between working in community mental health and working in private practice only. There is a middle path, and that is doing a small micro nonprofit therapy practice that is not necessarily as big as community mental health and has all the same issues as community mental health, but also gives accessible and free services to the community while you can still remain financially stable and financially well off. So, with that, we don't want to underestimate leadership because that is a huge component of running a successful nonprofit. So, I asked all of you, what are the biggest leadership struggles that we see? And these are the ones that people voted on, and that's setting boundaries with supervisees, delegating your stuff effectively, feeling confident in delegating your things, and then managing your own burnout and holding team members accountable. So you're not alone in this. Most leaders struggle with this. I found that most leaders and supervisors are super avoidant and they really avoid difficult conversations with themselves and with their supervisees or staff. So, when we talk about boundaries with supervisees, believe it or not, even though we preach this in our practice with clients, I have found that most supervisors have a very difficult time setting boundaries. As therapists and as leaders, we're helpers by nature, and boundaries can feel cold, but in reality, they do create safety and clarity for our staff, and staff respond to safety and clarity. So here's an example, and this is a real example that I have experienced. This was actually a manager who was also a therapist, but he would call me every day at 6 p.m. Now, our hours, my hours were done at 5. And in the beginning, I really wanted to show him that I was a present supervisor, that I was available to him, he could consult with me, that I had like an open door policy. So in the beginning of supervising him, I would answer his calls. And then as the calls started to go on and the pattern continued, I actually realized that these were not emergencies, even though to him it felt like it was an emergency for maybe one of, because he was a manager, so he was managing other staff and they were dealing with clients. But these weren't like a client in crises where you needed to go up the chain. This wasn't, anyone who was suicidal or homicidal. These were like everyday issues that should have been addressed during the day. So after I figured out like this is a pattern, I addressed it with him directly and said, these are not emergency situations where you need to be contacting me. I'm happy to discuss these things and talk them through with you, but honestly, these are things that can wait for our supervision time, or we could set up additional time during the day if we're not able to get to it in supervision. These were things that were so minor that they weren't even things that he needed to contact me that day immediately for. They were things that could have waited until supervision. So it's super important to set that boundary up front. Another example that I have is and this is something where I've learned to what not to do, is I've had, unfortunately, several supervisors and directors above me that when doing supervision, it wasn't a sacred place. It wasn't put aside as if it were a clinical hour. When we're seeing clients, that is a sacred space where we are not multitasking, or at least we shouldn't be. We are not working on our computer. We don't have the door open. It is a private, safe place for clients. And that is the same kind of space that we need to be replicating for our supervisees. And you might be like, whoa, I didn't even know that people would do that. Yes, they would. So I had several supervisors who canceled on me all the time. They didn't hold that space for me. They often multitasked, answered emails while we were in supervision, and they would have the door open while we were in supervision, and other people would pop in and stop by and start talking while in the middle of supervision. So it's super, super important that you're holding these boundaries and creating a safe place, just like you would for a client. The other important thing that I've learned over the years is communicate your expectations. Knowing exactly when they should be contacting you, how often, what you're available for. I tell everybody the more questions, the better. I want you to come with questions. If you're not asking questions, that's a red flag to me. The other thing is, I give everybody a handout that says the top 10 reasons to contact your clinical supervisor immediately. And these are things that supervisees, licensed or not, because sometimes you have supervisees who are licensed clinicians, depending on the hierarchy of your agency, they need to know when they need to be contacting you. I can't tell you how many times I've been supervising a practicum student and they did not call me in the moment, even after setting the expectation, when their client was suicidal. And not finding out until a week later when we're in supervision is completely unacceptable. So I give everybody the top 10 reasons to contact me immediately. And I let them know, like, call my cell phone. I am completely accessible. If I don't answer right away, wait 10 minutes and try and call me again. And then I make sure they understand in writing what is a true emergency. So that is something that I would highly, highly recommend. The other thing that is super important is to have a clear supervision agreement that outlines communication, expectation, office hours, your time for supervision, what you expect when they show up to supervision. People respond when you have clear boundaries. People feel chaotic when you don't set expectations and things are super unclear. All right, even this part I struggle with a lot, and that is delegating effectively. So, of course, there's a myth out there if I don't do it myself, it won't get done right. But we really need to reframe this mindset. Number one, you are not the end all be all. Other people are absolutely capable of doing things. But I want you to reframe it that delegation actually equals trust plus appropriate training. So I have a framework for the 3 T's of delegation, and this is identifying the task. So define the task clearly. Be clear on what the outcome is that you want. Training. Don't assume they know Give them SOPs, give them checklists, give them specific visuals, and walk them through the training as if it's a brand new staff and you're assuming they know nothing. And then trust, allow mistakes as part of the growth process. So, one example that I think is super important is handing off onboarding new staff to an admin or another person in your practice. Write a checklist, review week after week. I did all of the interviewing and hiring for so many years, not only in community mental health and executive leadership, but also in my own nonprofit. And if you all have ever hired and trained someone, it is absolutely exhausting if you're doing it right. Now, there's definitely the people who don't provide training and it's kind of willy nilly. Do not do that. Everyone needs to go through the same exact training, and there should be a checklist for the trainer that is doing it for them. So, in the last year, I have hired a director of operations, and one of the first tasks that I gave her was I don't want to be hiring and interviewing clinicians anymore. I am so done with it. There's other things I want to focus on. And I really needed to trust that my director of operations knew the people that we were looking for, could assess for what was going to be a good clinical fit for us, and then hire and train them effectively, which means I had to train her effectively in how to do this. And honestly, it's worked out great. It has been such a relief for me to not have to do this in my nonprofit. We all talk about burnout. Burnout is a real thing. It's going to happen in our field. Even if you're in leadership and you're not seeing clients as much, there's so much secondary trauma that goes unaddressed in our field that we really have to manage our own burnout. Leaders can't be pouring from an empty cup. That is definitely going to trickle down to your staff. If you're burnt out, they're going to be burnt out. You have to model for them how to manage your own burnout. So you need to know the signs: fatigue, irritability, resentment, overfunctioning, overstimulation. I have been there more times than I can count when working in community mental health. And if you've ever worked in community mental health, we all have felt this way at some point. But you need to really figure out what are your non negotiables. So, these are some strategies that I want you to put into practice to manage your own burnout. Schedule your non negotiable rest. Absolutely necessary. You need to have peer consultation or supervision for you. Supervision does not end when we're licensed. That is something I think is going to stunt growth. It's going to impact your sustainability, and you are going to not have the ability to offload onto someone else and really get that support back. That is necessary. You are not the end all be all to everything. You need to have your own support, whether it's in your agency or outside of your agency. I have a mentor from probably 10 years ago that has been such a huge influence in my life. He was an amazing supervisor to me, now more of a friend, but he is the person that I go to when I need mentorship and consultation. And then I have other people that I go to when I really need to talk business, like CEO, finances. So I am constantly consulting as the CEO of my own nonprofit. I am never making decisions in a vacuum. Feedback from other people is so, so important, and it's going to help you manage your own burnout. You need to outsource tasks that are outside of your genius zone. So, what I mean by that is we all have our strengths and we all have that we are not so great at. The areas that you are not so great at, you need to outsource. So, for example, I meet with a lot of people who are super great clinicians. They're also probably a little neurodivergent, maybe a little ADHD, and it's really hard for them to be super organized and to execute things, but they have amazing ideas, right? You need someone who can come in and help execute with you so that you are not the only one that is getting organized and reliant on the organization. So, I want you to do a mini exercise this week and write down one thing that you're going to stop doing that's going to help manage your own burnout. All right, here's a major, major issue that ends up resulting in a lot of turnover, a lot of toxicity in the workplace, and that is supervisors holding team members accountable. It does not happen enough. Believe it or not, as therapists, we can sometimes be terrible leaders and we have a really hard time holding people accountable. We also have people pleasing tendencies. So we don't want to be the mean boss. We want to be the boss that people like. We want to be well liked. And so we avoid difficult conversations. But I want you to reframe this and think about it as accountability is support and structure. And so here's an example that you will probably come across with. And that is a clinician is consistently late with notes, right? So you have a private conversation. I've noticed these notes are often late. This affects billing and clients. How can I support you in fixing this? And then discuss, okay, what is the plan going to look like to fix this? When are we going to do our check ins? So today's Friday. Let's start with Monday. How many notes do you think you can get done by Monday? And then Monday you check in. Okay, you still have 10 more notes left. You know what? At this point, we're probably going to have to hold off on seeing clients until you can finish your notes or whatever it is. Just depends on how extreme the situation is, but you want to give clear timelines so you can apply SMART goals to um, giving and holding team members accountable and helping them and support them getting to the place that they need to be. So, obviously, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound examples. Notes must be completed within 48 hours. Let's set up a reminder system so that you can get that done. And then let's set up a system for checking that to make sure it's accurate. Getting notes in on time is like a never ending problem in our field. And you need to be setting the tone from the beginning when you hire clinicians that, like, this is the expectation. If it's not discussed, then it's not an expectation. All right, so let's go over some key takeaways from this training. This was short and sweet training, but super important. If you can focus on these things as a leader, you are going to see such a difference in the way you lead, and it's going to feel better. I promise you that. Especially when we talk about providing boundaries that create clarity and safety for your supervisees and holding them accountable and reframing that support is not punishment and that you can hold boundaries, hold people accountable, and be kind at the same time. It does not mean that you're mean or not a good boss. Both things can be true. And then, of course, delegation is going to free you up and it's going to grow your team. You want to give skills to the people below you. Operating out of fear that people below you are going to surpass you in skill is an old school mindset that is honestly going to stunt your growth as a leader, and people are going to see right through that and not respect you for it. And remember, leadership is not perfection, it's clarity, consistency, and compassion. I have been leading for a long time in the nonprofit world, and I have people, I'm not even kidding, from 15 years ago when I was a baby supervisor, brand new still in the field because I became a supervisor in the mental health field very, very quickly. Um, and I still have people from 15 years ago coming to tell me that I was the best boss that they ever had. And these are people that I worked hard on to hold boundaries with and to delegate and to hold accountability and to grow them up. I have a clinician that I work with now where back in the day, 10 years ago, I had to put her on a PIP and now we have an amazing relationship and we've created so much trust in that she comes to me 10 years later. So it is possible to do these things and be a good leader and have people like you at the same time, but not everybody's going to. So, if you want more tools for leading without burnout, then I highly recommend joining my program. It's called Thriving Impact Building Your Nonprofit Group Practice. I have 3 different offerings under this program. I have a done for you package that includes building out your nonprofit, creating onboarding checklists, and hiring supervisees. It also includes developing a 5-year business plan and a bunch of other things in it, developing your board, training your board, all that kind of stuff. That package is $997. And then I have just a self-study program that's $897. That includes the entire online course with all of the downloadable templates that you will need to build a nonprofit. And then my full coaching program includes the online course, plus everything in the Done For You package, and 12 weeks of group coaching with me twice a week. And that package is $3,900. So if you're interested in any of these, feel free to DM me, send me an email. I respond to most emails. I try to respond to all of them as they come in. Sometimes I miss one or two, but you can always shoot me a DM and I will see that and get back to you. And of course, if you have any questions, let me know. You can comment on this training, download this training, whatever is most helpful for you.